Listen, on paper, the Ford Ranger is the better vehicle. Technical specifications tells us that. People are happy with it. The reviewers are clearly happy with it. But, g'day guys, it's Mark here from North Oz, and in today's video, we're going to be addressing a really big question that I've had on the first couple of videos that I've made of this 2023 Toyota Hilux Rogue, and it's, why did I purchase this over a Ford Ranger? So to answer this question, what I've done is I've split the video up into interior, exterior, drivetrain, and also some other factors as to why I purchased this over a Ford Ranger. So if you're looking for where this kind of model sits in comparison to the Ford Ranger, you're probably looking at an XLS or a Wildtrack, something like that. You know, for the Raptor, that's a more expensive vehicle than this, so I probably wouldn't be comparing to that. But if you want to, you can. Listen, guys, I'm looking around the interior here, and I was thinking about, you know, the Raptor and the Ranger lineup, and on paper, Ford have done a terrific job of putting their Ranger and, you know, their Raptor lineup. They've done a good job of putting that ahead of this vehicle on paper, especially in technical specifications. When we're talking about those technical specifications, we're, you know, talking about things like they have more inputs and outputs, whatever you want to call it. For, you know, USBs, they have some in the back, you know, for kids, if you're carrying kids around. They've got a USB little output on top of the rear view mirror as well for, you know, dash cam. So things like that, you know, they've thought a little bit about. Another specification that, you know, they really did a good job of trying to, I guess, undercut the Hilux was, you know, how that multimedia system looks. I mean, it's really no secret that a lot of these manufacturers and car manufacturers are trying to emulate, in my opinion, things like Tesla's, you know, companies like Tesla's, and they've done a terrific job, Ford, in my opinion, of getting a really big screen dead center in the middle of the vehicle. But for me, I just see it as an issue. For me, I don't think I don't think that's a good option. And if I could option it without it, I would, if I was to get a Ranger or get a Ford, because that's just more things that can scratch and more things that can go wrong. I've seen a lot of reviews on the Ranger, and almost every single one where they've used it, there's been lag, or there's been, you know, a mistouch, whatever you want to call it, and it didn't really make the experience a good one. From what I could tell. When you're talking about ergonomics, a lot of reviewers had issues with the viewing angle of the screen anyway, because, you know, think about it, how is a dash kind of set out in a ute? Well, we're all kind of based on the same sort of platform, and you've got this kind of big loop here, and then it goes to an empty space underneath. So it's going to be probably angled down just a little bit, isn't it? And that's exactly what's happened. It looks like that the screen is kind of more ergonomic towards the people in the back, which, of course, you know, it's not ideal. If you're a driver and you've got, say, you know, harsh light, you want the best viewing angle possible. And the only way, in my opinion, that you're going to achieve that in any current platform of ute that we have on the market at the moment is by putting a smaller screen in, or by having it in landscape as opposed to portrait. So in my opinion, I think that the ergonomics and, you know, the actual functionality of that multimedia screen is not something you should base a whole, you know, car purchase off. Same thing with just a few little extra outputs. Like, to me, that's not a deal breaker. Now, you're probably thinking, well, if the interior in the Ranger is a much nicer place to be in, why didn't I just purchase that? Well, in my opinion, this is the perfect interior. We've got the perfect amount of comfort in the seats. We've got the perfect amount of analog dials and knobs. Very good. I like that. And if you have a look on the Ranger, they have very few analog switches and analog buttons. To me, that's a big downfall. I like to be able to, if I'm, you know, driving, or if I'm off-road, if I get hot or cold or whatever it is, if I'm able to just quickly, without even looking, able to adjust the temperature, able to adjust the fan speed, whatever it is I need to do, change a song, whatever it is, I don't want to be stuffing around with the screen. You know, I don't want to be stuffing around with, oh, I pressed it the wrong way, or, you know, maybe it's too hot in the interior and the screen's not working. That has been a problem in the past with big touchscreen multimedia displays. And for me, it wouldn't be a big deal. You know, for me, it wouldn't be that big of an issue, because I don't need that whole big touchscreen to be able to function things like air conditioning, things like that. So for me, having the most basic interior possible, basic, it's not really, I like it, but in terms of having the most basic interior possible on probably the most highest spec Toyota that they make in the Hilux anyway, I think that this is actually
my preferred option. There's no distractions. The screen sits low. It doesn't sit high. The screen isn't bright either. So when I'm driving at night, it doesn't light up the whole cabin. There's a lot of things that I like about this interior. I could go on for ages about it and I won't, but in summary, I suppose, I really like the fact that it's just basic. You know, it's soft, it's comfortable, it's ergonomic. I know where everything is. It's very familiar. It's familiar from when I was using the Prado 150, so I kind of feel like I know where everything is. So for me, I actually really like this interior, and in terms of ergonomics, I would pick this vehicle every time, and also longevity. You know, if we're talking about how long you're going to get out of a vehicle, the more technology you have in it, the more things that can go wrong. I know it's an old way of thinking, but yeah, sure, there's going to be replacements, but they're going to be expensive, you know, and it is. It's more things that can go wrong, more things that can get scratched, more things that can, you know, especially on a car that's designed to be off-road and to be used as a work ute, designed to be anyway, you know, you want to make sure that, you know, that it's going to hold up. You know, it's going to hold up in harsh conditions. So for me, I like the fact that the interior is just as unbreakable as the Driveline, and it's just as tried and tested as the rest of the vehicle is, in that it is going to be reliable, and that I know that it shares a lot of parts with a lot of other vehicles in the Toyota lineup.
So while this vehicle doesn't have a huge amount of technology, there is still blind spot monitoring. There's also a panoramic camera on here as well, which I'll show you very shortly how that works. A lot of people have been saying, oh, but there's a trail camera on the Raptor and the Ranger. Why isn't there one on the Hilux? Well, that actually works as one, and I'll show you how in a second. It also has lane departure, amongst other things. If you want a full walk around and a full feature rundown of this vehicle, make sure you check out the walkthrough that is above your screen right here. If you're out and off-roading and not quite sure what is ahead of you, or you're parking in a spot that's a little bit tight, go ahead and click this button here and that'll give you panoramic camera mode. It's got a few different settings that you can run through, but essentially you're able to use this as basically a trail cam if you're not sure what's in front of you, but you can also see where you are in space with that 360-degree camera. You can also click it again, so let me just click that. You can also click it again and it'll show you what is underneath your side of view mirrors. Now I've got the door open at the moment, so the right one looks a little bit funky, but the left one shows you exactly what is under that left wheel arch. Very handy when off-roading, and a lot of people fail to mention this in their car reviews. So moving on to the exterior now, and there are actually a lot of things that the Ranger does that I really like. For example, they've got this nice little foothold here. I think it's in the Wildtrack, not in the Raptor, but they've got a nice little foothold here, you know, in the tray, so you can kind of stick your foot in there and get stuff that kind of works its way towards the cab. So I actually really like that, and I wish Toyota did something very similar. In fact, you're not even allowed to put your foot on the on this rear bumper here because of all the sensors and stuff like that. So, you know, you can't even stand up on that, so you have to do the old foot on the tire situation. So that's one thing I like about the Ranger. There's also a second thing that I really like, and it's they've got this this tie down kind of rail that sits on top of the tub. Now, for me, that's not very handy because when I tie things down, I don't really lash over the top of it and have the roller top open. For me, the roller top's going to be shut, or I'm going to have a canopy anyway. Maybe in the future, we'll see. I've got a build plan episode coming up shortly. I'll explain everything then. But you know, if we're talking about, you know, kind of the functionality of that tie down rail towards the top of the tub, not very helpful. Now, for me, I have no issues with this tray. You know, this is a class leading tray. It's one of the longest and widest trays that is made in the dual cab market at the moment. So it fits a lot of stuff in there. And that was, again, part of the reason why I purchased this vehicle. And also in terms of things like tie downs, there's always aftermarket options. I've already made a video where I installed tie downs in the back of this tray already. It cost me $23. It's not a big deal, not particularly hard to do either. So, you know, but yeah, I mean, like Ranger have done a good job of putting things like, you know, listening to people, obviously, and having a think about the ergonomics of putting things like, you know, a little foot hold there. I think they've done a terrific job of trying to fill that market of, you know, trying to listen to the customer and what they want and how they use their vehicles, you know, whether it's, you know, recreationally or around the job site. I think they did a terrific job. But for me, like, it's not a deal breaker when it comes to things like the tray. In terms of the exterior, I really like what Toyota have done with their new Rogue model, with how pumped out the guards are. I think they did a terrific job of the styling. I don't know how it's going to go off-road just yet. I'm doing an off-road test on this vehicle very shortly. But, you know, it feels like that they've done a really good job here, and it's a really nice, like, it almost looks custom, you know, and third party with how they've done it, you know, with the way they kind of have taken the original SR5 tub, have cut it and then put the extended guards on there. It looks good, looks clean, and I think that this is going to be a pretty hard wearing sort of a setup, and I'll be able to replace these quite easily because they're not color matched either, so it won't cost me too much money once these get damaged when we go out bush. But again, whenever we're talking about things like the exterior, it's always going to be, you know, subjective. You know, it's always going to be how you like the look of the vehicle. For me, I really like the way that the Hilux looks as it is standard in the SR5 version. I think if anything, it's probably actually a little bit narrow, and the Ranger actually sits quite a little bit wider if we're just talking about the stock SR5 versus the XLS and the Wildtrack. I think that they've done a better job, Ranger, of the styling, but you know, when it comes to this vehicle, this just looks unreal. It's kind of like if you know what Hilux should have done to begin with. But yeah, it's kind of almost a competitor for the, you know, for the Raptor in the way that it looks. But you know, of course, it's about 10 grand cheaper than the Raptor. So for me, I really like what Hilux have done here. They're obviously preparing for the GR Sport as well. I think it's going to be very similar to this, and I like the more aggressive exterior of the vehicle, and it gets a lot of looks. I've had, you know, driving this around, I've had heaps of people looking at the vehicle. So yeah, it's been good owning it so far, and I personally like the exterior. Opening up the bonnet of this Rogue also reminded me about two things. Is that one, there's no tailgate assist on this vehicle. So you know, when you open it, the tray will just drop if you aren't careful with it, and you know, it can hurt you if you aren't able to lift that tray yourself. And also, there are no bonnet struts in here as well. Again, there's aftermarket parts for them, but if that's going to bother you, obviously, I'm sure that the Ranger has both of those. From memory, they do. But for me, listen, it's not that big of a deal, guys. How often am I under the bonnet? Not very often. When I do, it's just quickly anyway. And having the old stick up there doesn't bother me at all. And if it does, I'll just chuck an extra a set of bonnet struts in here. And the tailgate assist, listen, it's a ute. Open it up, slam it down, slam it shut. It's a ute. You know, a lot of people are going to be like a little bit nitpicky with that sort of stuff and say, well, they should have included it anyway. It doesn't really bother me at all. And if it did, and if it does bother you, you know, you can always get an aftermarket option, you know, to fix that stuff for, you know, a couple $100. And yeah, sure, probably Toyota should have done that if they were aiming it more towards that sort of Ranger market. But you know, I think that it's fine. You know, it doesn't bother me, and if it does, I'll just chuck something like a $200 kit on here. It's not that big of a deal. Moving on to the Driveline now, and I am more than happy with the 2.8 litre direct injected diesel engine. I think it pulls fine. I think it actually pulls a lot better in the Hilux than it does in the Prado, maybe because it's a little bit lighter, I'm not sure. But I really do like the way this engine feels, and it's got plenty of power, plenty of torque, still has the same towing capacity as the Ranger, so, you know, not losing out there. And the fuel economy on this is great. I watched one review, I'm not going to call them out on who it was, but they said that they were getting like 12, 13 litres per 100 kilometres. This is not going to get 12 or 13 litres per 100 kilometres, I can tell you that much. I've already done, you know, yeah, sure, I've only done a few hundred kilometres in this, but it's been mixed driving. It's been like perfect 300 kilometres, 50-50, you know, half on the highway, half around town. And I'm under 9 litres per 100 kilometres right now. And I've asked you guys in the comments and said, what are you guys getting? And they're all under 10 litres per 100 kilometres. It just depends if you have things like, you know, all-terrain tyres and that on. I'm, of course, expecting that to go up. But from stock, these should not be running over 11 litres per 100 kilometres if you are, you know, unless you're absolutely, thrashing it, which I assume is what was happening on those tests and what those car reviewers were doing. But it does bother me because, you know, you can't just take a car out for a little bit for like, you know, a day and just expect that you're going to get accurate fuel consumptions, especially when you're doing 0 to 100 tests and stop and braking tests and stuff like that. So I think that some of the car reviewers just need to be a little bit more careful about how they are reviewing their vehicles, because you don't want to be spreading false information, especially when, you know, bashing on Toyotas is a really popular thing at the moment with the new Ranger coming in. Transmission is a 6-speed. I like it. It hunts a little bit and it's a little bit jerky, more jerky than the Prado 150 was for sure, but it's fine. Like it does the job. I always feel like it's in the right gear, and if it isn't, I just whack it over to the manual mode and just do what I need to do. It's not a particularly difficult thing. It doesn't have flappy paddles or anything like that on the steering wheels. Don't need any of that rubbish anyway. So for me, transmission is fine. I have no issues with it. Feels good, does what it needs to do, and it's an automatic, which, you know, some people are a little bit, oh, why didn't they make this in a manual? Why didn't they give it a manual option? listen, everything's moving towards automatic anyway, and the resale values of an automatic, in my opinion, would be better to the mass market. But if you have a manual then and you're trying to sell that, say 5 or 10 years down the track, you know, how many people are going to have manual licenses 5 or 10 years down the track? And not only that, is that you're going to be really narrowing down and really niching, you know, who's going to be able to buy this vehicle, which isn't great for resale, as I'm finding out now as I'm selling one of my other vehicles. Now, of course, it would be a bit silly of me to not mention the Ranger power plant in a bit of a comparison video. So yeah, on paper, and technical specifications says that the Ford Ranger has a better engine, you know, across all of its range, whether it's the bi-turbo 2-litre, the single turbo V6 3-litre, or the twin turbo in the Raptor. It looks like that their engine is, you know, on paper anyway, a better engine. I don't know in terms of reliability. We'll talk about that in a little bit anyway at the end in the other factors sort of section. But for me, I like the fact that this engine has been in the Prado for quite a while now. It hasn't changed since they put the DPFs in that in. It had that power upgrade with the Prado 150, and this has got the engine from that power upgraded 150, so it puts out about 500 Newton meters of torque. You don't need any more than that from a diesel, in my opinion. Of course, you know, if you wanted to tune it and get it up to the same sort of level as a, you know, as a Ranger, you obviously could do that, but then you're stuffing around with the, you know, you're stuffing around with the reliability of it all, aren't you? So for me, I'm happy with 500 Newton meters. I think it's a great engine. I like the engine as well. You know, it's the 1GD FTV engine from memory. I like it. You know, I had it in my Prado, didn't skip a beat. You know, they sorted out those DPF problems. I made a video on that as well, if you're interested. But yeah, for me, I have no issues with this at all. I think it's going to be a very reliable vehicle and engine for many years to come. We'll move into kind of the other factors section now and just talking about a few little miscellaneous things. And for me, probably the number one thing, and listen, to be honest, it's probably the biggest reason why I bought a 2023 Hilux and not the Ford Ranger, is resale. Listen, the resale on these Toyotas always have been excellent. Old Toyotas are selling for more than they ever have. Trade-in on them is excellent as well. I traded in my Prado 150 and I lost hardly any money after a year and a half. What can you say? You know, it's Toyota. Their Toyota Access finance system is excellent as well. You know, they do a terrific job of, you know, having their guaranteed future value, and they make it really easy. Toyota have excellent insurance, all that sort of stuff. So listen, Toyota, they've figured it out. You know, they've been in Australia for a really long time. They know what their customers want. They know that it's probably going to be the best-selling vehicle, and it probably will be for a long time. And they don't really need to advertise how well this vehicle actually works. I see hardly any Hilux Unbreakable ads anymore. They more pop up on, you know, on my suggested videos more than ads now. But, you know, I can't tell you how many ads I've had for the new Ford Ranger and the Ford Everest. It's in all my apps that have ads enabled. It's everywhere. So, you know, for me, in terms of resale, circling back and staying on track for resale, I don't think you'll be able to beat this, and I don't think that the Ford Ranger is even going to come close in comparison to the resale value of the Hilux, you know, 5 or 10 years from now. I've had a couple of conversations with some people in the comment section, and they said, oh, I had, you know, someone offer me well above what I paid for my Ranger. You know, and you have to also consider, and this is what we talked about as well in the comment section, is that, yeah, with the supply and demand issue that's going on at the moment and the shortage of vehicles, all used vehicles at the moment, especially four-wheel drives, are overinflated. You know, we all know that. So we won't really have a true idea of how well these vehicles hold their resale value, maybe for another year or two when that supply chain kind of fixes itself up. But when that supply chain does, you know, kind of level out as it will, I will bet, you know, all my money that this Hilux is going to be, you know, definitely better in resale than the Ranger. But at the moment, it's really hard to get a gauge for it because of this supply chain issue that we're having at the moment. But for me, yeah, resale on Toyotas, it's always been good and it always will be good. What more can I say? Tied first with the reason why I bought, you know, this Hilux, you know, with resale value in mind, is also reliability. You know, the reliability of these Toyotas is unmatched. And everyone's going to bring up the DPF situation. Listen, if you actually talk to a lot of people, they'll say it's actually not that big of a deal. Whatever, I made a video on it. If you want to go and check that out, you can if you're concerned about it, or if you want to learn more about kind of the argument for and against of a DPF, whatever. I've got the video there anyway. I got the resources there. But for me, guys, you know, reliability, you can't beat a Toyota, in my opinion. And yeah, sure, Ford. Hey, listen, that Ford engine, from memory, they've used that in America for quite some time now. So listen, it's going to be tried and tested. Of course it is. But you also have to understand what I use this vehicle for and where I live. I live in Cairns, not that remote. But where I go and in my trips, it is remote. And when you are out in, you know, out in the bush and you're out in these smaller towns, have a look around and see what people are driving. I'll tell you, it's about 60 or 70% of the people are driving around in Toyotas. And the other 30% is a mix of, you know, all your other vehicles, you know, from Holden, Colorados to, you know, Ford Rangers, of course, and BT50s. So it's kind of like a mixed bag. But when you actually have a look around and see what vehicles are on the road, it's Toyota country, you know, it is. And if something goes wrong with this vehicle, and things do go wrong, you know, I'm not saying that this vehicle is going to be perfect. I'm not saying that the Ford Ranger is going to be perfect either. I'm sure that both vehicles have had, you know, been under scrutiny and have had a lot of engineering gone into it. But if you're talking about how you can fix this vehicle in a remote situation, you have a better chance of fixing this, that they've had the same body and very similar, you know, suspension and engine, and, you know, it's been around for years, you know, and you just can't put a price on that. Now, people will use that argument and say, yeah, but it's outdated. Yeah, okay, yep, sure. Use that argument, it's a little bit outdated, but you also have to think from my perspective, I would rather buy a model of vehicle at the end of its model span before the facelift and change of engine and all that stuff. I'd rather buy that last vehicle than buy the first vehicle of a new model, if that makes sense. Because you know that that vehicle is going to have a whole lifelong, you know, a whole model lifelong, catalog of parts, both aftermarket and factory. You know, there's going to be more of them on the road if something happens. So you're not the one doing kind of, you know, the original testing. You know, you're not the one finding out what's going to go wrong with it or not. So for me, reliability, it's not just about which engine is better. I'm not a mechanic. I can't tell you that. But what I do know from just driving around and traveling over the last few years is that there are more Toyotas on the road. And that means that it's going to be easier to fix this on the road. And there's a lot more Toyota dealerships. And there's a lot more accessibility to Toyota parts from both other vehicles as well. Now, in conclusion, with the argument of the Toyota Hilux versus the Ford Ranger, listen, on paper, the Ford Ranger is the better vehicle. Technical specifications tells us that. People are happy with it. The reviewers are clearly happy with it. But I think that the Toyota Hilux, whether it remains the best-selling vehicle or not, I don't know. But you will not get me out of a Toyota. I'm telling you that much. Yeah, I have another vehicle that is a Subaru as well, but that's a performance vehicle, so it doesn't really count. But in terms of what I'm going to be using for traveling and I need reliability, you're not going to get me out of a Toyota, guys. I'm sorry. It's as simple as that. I like the Toyota dealership that I deal with. I like the vehicles that they make. I like the fact that they work, and I've never had an issue with one, which is, again, is quite important. I've purchased a couple of Toyotas myself. My parents have purchased upwards of 6 or 7 Toyotas over their lifespan as well. So, you know, my brother has just purchased a Toyota as well. And, you know, just having a lot of Toyotas in the family as well makes it easier for when things happen. You know, 3 of our vehicles, my brother has a Fortuner, I have a Hilux, and my parents have a Prado. They run off virtually the same running equipment, you know. So if something does happen out in the bush and I've got spares or whatever, I can share them around. We have similar sized tires. We have similar, you know, it helps being in that ecosystem. It's like the argument of the Apple versus Android situation, you know, which is better. It's like, well, if you've got a Mac and you've got an iPhone, it kind of makes sense that you would get an iPad. You know what I mean? But that's not a great argument for cars. And I know people are probably going to comment on that in the comment section. But listen, I've had great experience with Toyota. I really like the dealership that I deal with as well. Any issues with vehicles that I've had in the past, you know, little things like I've had questions about paint, you know, I've had questions about, you know, how it runs. Is it supposed to run this way? You know, what is the resale can I get on it? You know, they're really open and honest, and they're really good people as well, the people that I work with up at John Cole Toyota. So for me, I can't see myself purchasing a vehicle either that isn't from John Cole Toyota, and I probably can't see myself getting out of a Toyota as well. I think they make terrific vehicles. I think they're doing really, really cool things with their cars now, like putting big body kits on them. I think that that's awesome. I don't think we should be discouraging this, guys. You know, a lot of people seem to just be on the Toyota bashing situation at the moment. You know, they seem to just want to find things wrong with it. And almost every review, and I've left comments on those reviews, so if you look in the comment section, you'll find my comments in there. I've left comments on almost every single review of this vehicle. And in those comments, I've said all of the things that a lot of the car reviewers are missing out about this vehicle. You know, things like Toyota have put for the first time in their ute anyway, they've put a single cylinder rear disc brake. You know, that's a first for Toyota, and everyone, like, just half of the people don't even talk about it and the other half just skim over it. But these are big things that Toyota are doing. You know, not only, I don't think it's even to compete, you know, because there's no way that this can compete with a Ranger on paper. You know, if you want to buy a Ranger, they'll go and get that anyway. But I think they're doing great things with their vehicles. I love what they're doing with their performance vehicles as well. Obviously, they've got a GR Sport, you know, coming out of the Toyota Hilux, which, if you don't know what GR is, it's awesome. Gazoo Racing, check it out. They have some awesome vehicles, that department. You know, they're doing awesome things, and we shouldn't be discouraging that. You know, they obviously are doing cool things with their performance section as well of their performance cars. So that's pretty cool too. And, you know, it's starting to flow on to, you know, us four-wheel drivers and us enthusiasts. And everyone's so quick to say, yeah, don't buy that. It's rubbish. You know, it's just got a body kit on it and that's it. It's like, yeah, but you have to look past that. And you also have to think about, you know, what have Toyota sacrificed to be able to do something like this? And I appreciate it. I think I would much rather buy this right now. I'd much rather buy this over an SR5. I think it looks more aggressive. I can put bigger wheels and tires on it for off-roading. You know, it comes with a lift from the factory. By the time I put bigger wheels and tires on this as well, it's going to be an almost 2-inch lift. And I don't even need to spend that extra money. It's all got factory suspension and factory running gear underneath it. So it's all within warranty. So in conclusion, for me, I don't think we should be too quick to bash the Toyota Hilux. Go and test drive one. Test drive the Ford Ranger if you want to. I haven't, disclaimer, because I knew that I wanted to buy this vehicle. And yeah, it might be a little bit narrow-minded for a car reviewer, but I'm not a car reviewer. You know, I'm someone who enjoys my Toyotas, and I probably will only exclusively have Toyotas on this channel. But for me, I think that the Toyota are doing a terrific job with their vehicles, and we shouldn't be discouraging that at all. And the car reviewers, I think, need to take, we've got a lot of flies out here at the moment, guys. Yeah. We're getting deep into this video now, so if you're here this long, make sure you've subscribed. But, you know, you have to think about what Toyota have done with these vehicles. And I think that we can't be discouraging that. I think they've done a terrific job with it. I think that if you're someone out there who's not sure if they want a Hilux or not sure if they want a Ford Ranger, go and test drive them both, but also consider what I've said as well. You know, please consider that the reliability of these engines are incredible. You know, the reliability of these vehicles is excellent. The resale of them is good. The interior, it works. It's not fancy, but it works. So anyway, I'll leave it there, guys. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going on and on. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, as always. And guys, if you have any questions, as always, put them in the comment section and I'll happily answer them. And I'll see you very shortly in the next video.